All right. My name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Kevin Johnson, Beth Klingner. We're at Dion Vineyard. It's November 15th, 2019. Thank you both for joining us today. We do appreciate this. And thank you for the wine also.
The good part.
The first question, of course, is why wine?
Are you going to answer your answer? You get an answer first or not? Why did you do wine?
Why did I do wine? So I used to drink a lot of beer, and I was getting fat. And this is in my 20s, early 30s, and I started drinking wine. And as you know, you start out with the cheap wine, and the more you drink, the better it gets, and the more expensive it gets. And so as my career progressed in high tech, and I started spending more on wine, and I started developing a palate. And then I am a geek, and so when I get interested in something, I tend to deep dive. And I kept getting more and more interested in wine, so I started taking classes. I would go to wine tastings. I was getting knowledgeable about it. I went to Bordeaux. I went to different wine country places and wineries and started tasting. I lived in Colorado at the time, so and I worked for Intel. And then Intel said, "Oh, we have all these jobs in Oregon and Arizona. Anybody want to go?" And I went, "Arizona, no." And I went, "Hey, I could live in wine country." I'm moving to Oregon. And I had traveled here on the Oregon coast when I was a kid camping, and I had never been to Portland, and I came here sight unseen. And I've never left. That was 2002. So I was pretty into wine, and I was pretty into tasting and lots of different wines, and bought wine all over the world and tasted wine all over the world, and mostly at wine shops, not traveling, but some. And then I was in Colorado. I hung out at this wine shop where I had a French distributor say to me, he goes, "Well, if you don't like Pinot Noir, it's because you have not drunk enough of it yet." And he was right. And so when I moved to Pinot Noir country, I started drinking more and more, and my wine cellar became less and less Italian and more Pinot Noir. And I love it. I could drink Pinot Noir for the rest of my life.
Still a lot of Italian.
Well, that's because we don't drink it. We drink Pinot Noir. and that includes sparkling for sure.
Yep.
But then I started taking more classes, and I found WSET, and I started taking classes, and then I did WSET level 2, and actually worked at a winery. I was dating some guy who broke my heart and broke up with me, and it was what used to be Case Buyers Weekend, the weekend before Memorial Weekend, and I was out tasting with friends, and we went to Archery Summit because they were wine club members there, and I was like, "This is fun." And I said to one of the guys, "How do you get this gig?" And he goes, "Oh, you go talk to Emily." So I went over to Emily. I said, "Hi, I'm Beth. I'm willing to work for wine, and I happen to be free Memorial Weekend. Do you need any help?" And she's like, "Sure." And so she's like, "You want to roll barrels around and wash dishes?" I was like, "Yeah, it was fun." And so I did it, and by day 2, I started talking to people about Pinot Noir, and they were like, "You're kind of good at this. And do you want a job?" And I was like, "Well, I have a job, so no, but I could, work on weekends once in a while." So I worked in their tasting room for a year or so, just 1 or 2 weekends a month, and had a blast and learned. So that was when Anna Matzinger was the winemaker, and Lee Bartholomew was the vineyard manager, and they would write up tech sheets and teach us stuff in the tasting room. So I learned from two of the best in the business, and I learned what malolactic fermentation was. I learned all the vineyard stuff, and I studied those sheets. I still have them somewhere. I should pull them out and show them to Lee. She's now our vineyard manager. Yeah. But and I just I deep dived, and I love it. And then so I just went full on geek. And then I met Kevin, and he at Indie Wine Fest, and it was 2010, and I mean, technically I did fix his computer at Intel, but I fixed a lot of computers that day. So, and we met at Indie Wine Fest, and if you meet a winemaker, never say to him, "Hey, do you need any help?" Because they always do. And he's like, "Sure." He's like, "Free labor." But we started dating, so our first date was spent at Indie Wine Fest, and our second date, he said, "So, do you want to meet me at Vino Paradiso?" And I was like, "My favorite wine bar? Yes, I do. I would like to do that." And so we sat down, and he's looking at the wine list, and he goes, "Would it be wrong for a guy to order a glass of pink sparkling wine on the first date?" And I was like, "Only if he doesn't order the whole bottle." So we drank a bottle of Cremant de Loire, I think. Oh, no, it was... I can recognize the label, but I can't think of what it was at the time. It was French Cremant. And then we drank the Pinot Noir flight, and then we were talking, and we had way too much in common. And I'm from New Mexico, and he had actually spent time in my hometown, which nobody goes to, and we had both lived in Japan, and we had all these wine things to talk about, and we were having a great time and getting along really well. And then we drank a bottle of
2008?
no.
Oh, before that.
No. We had Petite Syrah, which is a weird cult little wine that we both happened to be really bad at the time. Drank a lot of. We haven't had any since.
Petite
I don't
Syrah
think.
is neither petite nor Syrah.
Yeah, and it's a crazy wine, but we had that one. And then I'm like, well, I'm not driving home at this point. And he said, well, I guess I should pour you my wine. And I was like, oh my God, please let me like it. Please, please, please let me like it. Because
She didn't say that.
I had all this vested, and I'm like, what if I don't like his wine? And I loved it. And so it was 2008. It was the second wine he had made, and it was absolutely superb. And so he wooed me with that wine. And then somehow, in 2011, he was no longer doing custom crush, so got bonded to make wine here. I was like, okay, great, I'm gonna work harvest. And then it was late and cold, and he said, want to go to France? I was like, sure, let's go to France. And he goes, let's go work harvest in Burgundy. I was like, okay, let me see who I know that I can work that with. And Scott Wright was a friend of ours, and he hooked me up with a guy named Thibaut Hubert Verdereau, and he speaks enough English to, he's pretty good at English, and is willing to have random foreigners show up and work for free in his vineyard and winery.
Well, remember, it's 2011, so it's economic Great Recession time frame, and so we were the joke that we were the illegal American labor that was infiltrating France to take the jobs the French wouldn't do.
And we met a lot of Oregon winemakers about
half of Oregon was in that year.
That's where I met David Adelsheim and Josh Bergstrom and Brianne Day was there. We worked with her.
We worked with Brianne
but we already knew Brianne. And who else did we meet? Anyway, there was a lot of people there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
And
Aaron and Ashley Bell and from Dwayne Druin, and they're friends of ours anyway. So anyway, and then I didn't know anything about making wine. I knew a lot about drinking it and tasting it, but not about making it. And Kevin knew a lot about making it, and we did it in this 20 by 20 foot building by the skin of our teeth, and
for a number of years.
I can clean stuff, which is about 50% of winemaking is cleaning. So there is a picture of me somewhere on the internet with my rear end hanging out of a tank while I'm wiping it. I mean, I clean stuff, and you wipe it all down. The tank. Sorry. More wine. And so we did 11, and it was crazy. And you want to hear the Misery Chardonnay story?
Sure, we can tell Misery Chardonnay. That didn't happen. So Misery Chardonnay, well, it happened, but then there was a bottling accident, and so it was never formally released. No, not really.
Oh, totally my fault.
But we made a small bit of Chardonnay, and it was on Halloween, I believe.
Yes. October 31st, 2011.
And I think that was the last day we picked, actually.
It was.
We did the entire vineyard in
10 days?
Started on the 19th, I guess 12 days.
Started after your birthday, yeah. It was the only year we've started after your birthday.
I think it was the 20th. The latest I think we've ever started. Very cold, crazy cold late year. 10 was only a day. We started a day earlier than that in 10. And it was still low. 10 was warmer. And a little bit, not much. Anyway, we picked that Chardonnay, and then we had it out here, and we had a really old manual basket press, and it was dark and it was cold. And, well, actually, I was right.
We were both working full time at Intel.
We were both working full time at Intel, and it was. I was not able to get out here very early, and so the picking crew was leaving, and Beth was out here, and I think they were like, "Are you gonna be okay?" Because it's cold. And
the crew does not usually care, but they're like, "Are you okay?"
You know, porta potty
dark.
in that other building, and not this building at all, and it's dark. And she's like, "Okay." And then I finally get out here, and so then we're doing the manual.
And the press is metal, and it's cold, so it bites.
And you basically have to disassemble this thing every time you do a press load, which seems to be about 5 gallons, I swear. And so, I was getting very angry and hurling pieces of the press into the vineyard, and then having to go find them and bring them back. And I think she was a little concerned, like,
It was miserable.
This is not a side I've seen before.
And we had one Chardonnay barrel that we had gotten from friends of ours
Yeah.
who sanded their name off the end, so we
Yeah.
won't mention that.
Right.
But it's people we really respect their Chardonnay.
Dog bit now, actually.
Yeah, it is, actually.
Yeah, and so we got in there for a minute. It was really lovely, very
was
Chablis-like. And actually,
gorgeous.
it did freeze that night because the next day we came out and the leaves had gone from yellow. At least you could actually see the line across the bottom of the vineyard where the freeze line was, and it was orange. And so they're like, it was half orange, half
beautiful.
yellow. It was beautiful. Not much fun though while you're out here in it. But the Chardonnay turned out lovely, and then we just kind of had a little bottling accident. And didn't quite
Well, we
make
used
it.
to hand bottle, and again, cleaning is utmost importance. And I had bottled exactly once before that, and Kevin got a job at Spacex.
Right, I was not in the state at the time of bottling, so.
And we were like, well, because I'm never one to say no to a dream job, and he had applied at SpaceX and got a job, and he can tell you what a rocket costs, which is cool. And he went down to California, and I was like, and everybody's like, well, this is the end of your relationship. I'm like, I don't know, let's see how it goes. There's still this vineyard thing, and well, we started with 2 weekends a month.
Right.
Going, well, that'll be okay. It wasn't okay, really fast. So he would travel 3 weekends and I would travel one. I'd go down to LA one weekend. Not always good for the wine business because we're both still working full time. And
Yeah, so that meant there was accidents like the 11 Chardonnay, which
it was bottled on
lovely.
Easter weekend, which was a
Yeah.
very expensive weekend to fly. So I was on my own. So I
Right.
recruited some friends who had no
Also not
idea,
bottled,
and we didn't have running water. We didn't have a hot sea, and so we were boiling buckets of water and trying to sterilize hoses, and didn't do a very good job.
Yeah.
So junk went into the bottle with the wine, and
but it was lovely.
it was so good. And then the junk slowly took over, and it was awful.
Yeah.
So Misery Chardonnay, we never labeled it, never sold it.
Yeah, it's too sad.
Like a shooting star.
Yeah,
It would have been
good.
so freaking good
Yeah,
too.
11 would have been a great year. Was a great year because we had Pinot
For
Gris
white
from it,
wine.
and Pinot
Oh,
Gris
yeah.
is amazing. So
Amazing.
yeah, it was a very very crisp.
Hence Misery
fancy.
Chardonnay.
So yeah,
So that goes back to why wine. Well, I didn't study it. He did, and he had made wine at Custom Crush and went to Schmecketer and went to some online courses at UC Davis. And I just was like, hey, Kevin, how do I do this? And then we've learned a lot by making mistakes.
Well-
And the Misery Chardonnay, I think, ended up being 20 cases.
yeah, it was a small
So
mistake.
it's actually a small mistake, and we've screwed up on small scale, which is and you learn so much more from making mistakes than from making successes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're very self-taught, and we're very, but we know what not to do. That's for
Learned
sure.
a lot of that. Yeah.
The 11
Or
Pinot
that.
Gris
Or definitely
re-fermented in bottle. So that was another bottling accident.
Yeah. Was it 11 Gris? I think it's 12 Gris that re-fermented the bottle.
I thought it was
I think
11.
it was 12. So
Anyway.
you're not really there's certain rites
It was
of passage.
delicious, even when it was fermenting.
Yes.
But some of them, and it was screw capped, and we unscrew it, and then and we're like,
It's not supposed to happen.
oh, that's
so
not
wow.
supposed
Screw
to.
caps actually do have quite ability to hold pressure, apparently.
Only 2 of them broke that I know of.
Yeah. So.
But some of my wine club still rises me about that wine, because they were like, oh yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah.
We really liked that
I
one.
think there's a couple of rites of passage as a winemaker. One is usually you have some sort of carboy blow up inside your house.
Yes.
My dad did that. I did that. I think you managed to do that once.
I did it in the winery, but
Right,
yeah,
same idea. So usually there's something about
carboys.
exploding carboy. Usually while you're not around.
Yeah.
Your wife, your roommate, or somebody gets the thrill of a wine volcano and cleanup. And then usually getting to re-ferment the bottle. That's another one that almost I think every winemaker has managed to do at some point. Usually you'll have one wine where you just completely screw up. You're like, that didn't work at all, kind of thing. You thought it was going to turn into one thing, and you're like, I was wrong. So yeah, there's these little things that kind of, I think almost every winemaker has done at some point. Hopefully at small scale, and not like tens of thousands of cases or something like that. So,
And just once.
yes,
per.
just once.
You
Hopefully
only
just
need to
once.
make those kind of mistakes once.
Yes, making them
You can make a
twice.
different mistake the next time.
Right, making them twice is not a good sign. So once is okay, and but I think we've learned a lot. So
We've gotten a lot better. And our wine club has, we were like, well, we've been growing grapes for 40 years, so let's call our wine club the Founders until we get to 40 people. And it took a while because We're small and we're not great
winery.
at marketing and selling and stuff. And so our founders have been around for a long time. So they know the re-fermenting Pinot Gris, and they know the and they tell us too. And a lot of them are super wine geeks and Pinot geeks, and they're like, you guys keep getting better. We're like, well, God, I hope so. You know, you've been there for our mistakes, but they're like, this is amazing. This is your best one yet. And I'm like, good, because it's the last one we made. So yeah, so we're constantly on an upward trajectory, and just some of our processes have gotten better. And then with this new building up here, we've gotten a lot cleaner, which helps greatly, and then we have better temperature control, which also helps greatly.
Yeah, I think this has been our own little mini reenactment of the early days of the Oregon winery side of the business. Maybe we didn't need to be quite so precise in our reenactments, but
By the seat of our pants.
yeah, I think so. But I think we learned some things that, you know, we've had a vineyard, started our vineyard in 1973. But we never made our own wine. We always sold the grapes. And so while we were there in the early part of
There's a bottle of 1999 over there.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Careful. Oh, microphone.
No, I can't do that.
Yeah, that was Dad. Yes, Dion Winery. So yes. Didn't really know the name.
I cleaned out his basement. I found it.
Standard stock
Computer label.
It's got
generated.
junk on it.
Yeah, and you can yes, there's some sort of sediment that was unfiltered.
Definitely.
And
Natural.
99 was probably
Very natural.
very natural.
It might be good.
It might be interesting to open that. Someday.
There's only one.
The only one
I
that
didn't
we've
find any other
found
ones.
So far. I don't know where the rest.
No,
of
I looked at the rest of the bottles. There's only one.
99. Jeez. I think. Well, I'm sure I helped them with that. That's interesting. Yeah, but oh, right, why wine? It's my parents' fault. So, like a few other winery people,
Bubbles.
oh yes, got to get a resupply. Like a few other winery people out there in the Oregon wine business, I am, well, I guess third generation actually, which is maybe not like, I don't know if anybody else can claim that. And I'm not sure if it's semi-legit. We planted our first vineyard when I was 2 years old, somewhere around there. And so I grew up around this, as did my sister, and we both, like most children, really, really enjoyed being out in the dirt and the mud and the bees.
Child labor is totally legal when it's your own children.
Totally illegal. But we grew up around it. Didn't realize that was kind of like a weird thing, I guess. We mostly grew up around the vineyard side of it. So unlike, say, Louis Sponzi or someone like that, or Adam Campbell, we didn't necessarily have winery stories on that, although we visited wineries and that kind of stuff.
We also, one of our harvest T-shirts says "Keeping our day job since 1973."
Right. Yeah, that was
because
also.
His parents both. Well, your mom raised kids.
She raised kids and also ran several small businesses on the side.
And his dad had a full-time job the whole time until he retired.
Yep. And so it started off. It was kind of two factors. My grandfather was a lumberman, a sawmill side. And he actually moved down to California with grandma at age 18 or something silly, like right at the start of the Great Depression. And it was different back then. And he got in the logging business, and he kind of, I guess he was well known for, and probably not well liked, he learned basically how sawmills work well. And so then he would be hired by various sawmill owners that sawmills were not working well, and he would be able to come in and be like, yeah, you don't need that guy, and you don't need that guy, and you don't need that guy, which probably didn't make him very popular. But kept the sawmill running, so maybe the town should thank him because the sawmill didn't go out of business. But he did that for a number of years in California, Oregon, probably up in Washington. He and Grandma were both originally from Washington. Near Yakima, actually, and Prosser, I think, is where Grandma was born, as I recall. Granger, maybe one of those small towns that now everybody knows for wine, ironically enough. Not at the time. I think they were known for like alfalfa or something.
Having a bathroom.
Yeah, and running water, maybe. And he was, I'm trying to remember, seventh child or something. It was a big family. And there's a story of him, sometime when he was a teenager, he caught a pitchfork in the chest and somehow walked that off and kept going. I'm like, really?
I don't know that story.
He was a tough guy. He was hardcore. We'd get a splinter because there's posts and stuff, and he'd be like pocket knives out. He's like, I'll get it. We're like, running from grandpa kind of thing. And so he finally retired from the logging business, and they moved to Sunnyside. And I think maybe for about 6 months, grandma put up with that, and it was like, you need to get that out of the house. I'm not used to you being around here. Go find something to do. And he'd grown up on a farm, so he bought a few acres of land to kind of have something to mess around with. And he actually, I think, heard, it wasn't, there's some fellow who's the father of the Washington wine industry, McClure or something like that. I know, again, all Washington guys are like, it's and I'm like, I know. Anyway, I think it was either him or one of his disciples was going around trying to get the farmers in the area to plant vinifera grapes up there, which they were successful eventually. And my grandfather heard that, and he sounds like a good idea. So they planted, along with my dad and mom and him, planted some Merlot and some Cab up there. And you're like, awesome. This was like, I don't know, 65, 68, way early. And right idea and almost right area. Unfortunately, he was down in the flats as opposed to up on the hills. That's where all those vineyards are today. And so they did it for a few years, and then one of those Washington freezes, did a winter kill and killed off the vineyard, which happened, especially in the low areas and that kind of stuff. And so the great Washington wine experiment came to an end. My dad, besides helping out Grandpa, also, him and Mom had been getting into their own sort of wine interest, and this was back in the time frame. They had a number of tasting clubs and winemaking clubs. I think it was maybe in through Portland State sometimes. And so he was in a club with Ron Volsteck, who founded Oak Knoll. They were in some tasting clubs with, I'm pretty sure, we were talking earlier, Dickie Rath, and I think Susan Sokol-Blosser and Bill Blosser. At least my mom seems to think that they were in that group. I don't know if Susan agrees, but whatever. We'll just say yes. And my mom will tell stories about how, they'd be at these tastings, and they'd have, there were like 5 tables, and everybody's blind tastings, and everybody's raving about this wine, and they didn't like it at all. In fact, there was a whole bunch of it left on their table, and one of the other people at the other tables came over and said, "Oh, you've got some of that left," and tried it, and then they're like, "Oh, this bottle's bad," and they're like, "Well, no wonder we didn't like it." Right? Everybody else got to enjoy a nice bottle, and they probably got a corked one or something. But they were doing that, and so between that interest building and
his mom will say that Kevin has had his diaper changed in more tasting rooms than probably any other child.
Especially in Napa. They did a Napa adventure, and apparently I got my diaper changed in various, probably not famous places.
Very famous places.
Yeah. Probably. I don't know.
Because why not take the baby?
Right, it's the 70s. What are you going to do? It's what you did back then, probably now. So they decided to give it another try, except do it down here. And so they went looking for property. They almost bought a piece of property on this little road called Sorrento, which is now Beaverton. And we would have been millionaires if they bought that, because it has now got houses. In fact, a girlfriend in high school may have lived in the area. Anyway, it's like, oh, Dad, we could have been rich, but they didn't do that. And instead, they came out here, and they bought 5 acres down the road from us.
Because his dad didn't want to drive down to Newburgh, Dundee area. He wanted something close. Right,
something close. They lived in Beaverton, and almost the same house that my mom's still in. They moved 3 blocks when I was in junior high. That was a traumatic move for my dad. He didn't like moving. I, on the other hand,
and then
a different experience.
And they moved to Portland, 3 blocks, and they moved to Portland.
They moved into Portland by moving 3 blocks. It's right behind Jesuit High School, if anybody knows the area.
Crowley Hills.
And so, and back in the day, that was about a 20-minute drive, and now it's more like 40 at least, kind of thing, but it was relatively close. And those plantings, we think, are actually the first plantings that are in the hopefully soon-to-be Laurelwood AVA. The Ponzi's actually planted before us, but their original vineyard's outside the AVA. It's outside any AVA. It's over by their own property. And then the first time they planted over here, I think it's 78, maybe 76.
76.
Over that way, yep. And so they started planting in 73. You guys were loaning you the journal about the varmint and other ridiculous stories. I mean, it was Wild West of vineyard, people not knowing what they were doing, digging post holes by hand. They dug a well by hand, and then they drank the water out of it and got sick. Because it only went down about 20 feet, I think. And it was good enough for watering the plants, and they're like, maybe we just bring water out. But they started off, and it took a little while to plant out that 5 acres. And I was there, and then my sister joined shortly around that time afterwards, and wasn't much help to begin with because she couldn't
An infant?
Couldn't move. And crawled a little bit. And so then we bought this property up here. The first 10 acres in 75, 76 time frame, and did the first plantings up here in 76, and that's one of the wines we've been tasting here is from those plantings. The grapes came sometimes from OSU, sometimes out of California. Dad never did a suitcase clone thing. I don't think he went to France until 2000, kind of thing, maybe a little bit.
But he had a lot of French books.
I had a lot of French books.
He was a researcher.
He was a guy who liked to research things. He'd buy a bunch of books and study it up and do those kind of things. So, and his grandpa would come down. Him and grandma bring down one of those old Terry fifth wheel trailer kind of things and park it on the property and stay out here. And grandpa loved driving the tractor around. That was a blast. And in fact, we would sell the grapes down to Oak Knoll, which is about 2 miles away, across 219. I think 219 was paved at the time. The road here was not paved until 2008, which also led to the ruralness of the place. And so when we did harvest, he would load up a very small trailer's worth of grapes and drive the tractor all the way to Oak Knoll, across 219, pull in. They would unload the grapes, and off he would go. And they would dump them, and then they'd be like, what do you think, 20, 30 minutes until he's back with the next load? Yeah, okay. And just all day long, he'd show up with this just trickle of grapes, and they were like, they loved him.
They'll still tell you those stories.
No,
too.
they remember. Yeah, they remember.
Marge especially.
Marge will remember. They remember that. And so, but we grew from 2 or 3 acres, and then all 5 acres planted out, and then we started planting up here, and that was at least up through the 80s, and my sister and I really enjoyed doing farm labor, especially since we lived in Beaverton. So we would go to school, and unlike some of the folks, I think Louisa and I'm sure Adam went to school more out here in the countryside, so they were farm kids. We were suburb kids, and so we would have to work our weekends out here in the mud, and then go into town, and everybody else, they're wearing their Jordache jeans or whatever, and we're have dirt on our hands, and we're like, what is this, right? Kind of thing. And then my mom still has a story of she got us Walkmans for one Christmas, and it was Thriller. So whatever year Thriller came out,
mid-80s,
81 to something like that, and so that time frame. And she came out here with us, and we're suckering. So one of the things you do in the spring is the buds will come out, and up on the fruit zone, that's what you want, but you also get some shoots come out of the trunk, suckers. And you need to get rid of those. It mostly involves walking by each plant and leaning over, and basically with gloved hand, you just knock them off. They come off right, no problem. If you get them early enough. You wait too long, and wood starts to harden up, and then it's a pain to get them off. So you want to get them as quick as you can, knock them off. Literally with a finger, you can knock them off. And you would think as kids it would be pretty easy because we didn't have to bend over too much. We were somewhat tall, but not too bad at that point. And we were complaining continuously, so much that she stole a Walkman from us and put on Michael Jackson so she didn't have to hear us complaining anymore. And we just did, up and down the rows, and she wasn't listening to us at that point. So there was a lot of family adventures like that. We don't have a family Labor Day tradition, like going to the beach or camping or anything like that, because every Labor Day we were working. In particular, we were putting on bird netting, which was a big problem in the 80s because the harvests were later and the migratory birds would get here. And so we tried to put, the netting is that black plastic stuff, you'll see it like around construction sites, very fine mesh. And we would actually, Grandpa and Dad made this rig where we would put, it was rolled on PVC pipes, and we put it on 2 poles on the back of a trailer, and you drive the trailer and pull the stuff off behind you by hand. And so we would drive up and down, and one of the kids, usually me, and then eventually my sister got big enough, she claims she's better at driving the tractor than me, but that's not true. Don't let her tell you that. And the problem was, though, you're driving along, first of all, you start to hear things because tractor sound, and then when the nets would fall up or bind and you had to stop to get them, everybody in the back would yell at you, "Stop!" And so then you're like, trying to figure out how to stop a tractor, and we're like 12, I'm driving this tractor. And that's what we did for like 2 or 3 weekends in a row, including usually Labor Day. It was hot, and so...
This is why we got married on Labor Day.
We needed to get something better tradition than that.
And yet, we got married in 2013, and we've had, with the exception of this year, we've had hot early harvests every year. So we don't get to celebrate our anniversary till harvest is over.
Sparkling wine, because this year was right around our anniversary, so which is great. We love sparkling wine, obviously. So we did that for a number of years. We bought the lower property in like '85 and started planting that out. I remember being out. My dad was measuring off future rows.
It's documented in the journal.
Yeah. Oh no, not that one. That was the journals before that. And so we took big long tape measure, and every 9 feet put in a little marker, because Grandpa would, when we did that, and Grandpa just basically drove a tractor, running over the things with a plow to open up the land, and then we would hand plant. We hand planted about half the property we have now, and then eventually we hired out to do that. And it was actually planting as a kid is a lot of fun, or at least as a boy, because what we would do is we'd dig a big trough trench from the top of the road down to the bottom, and then we'd run water down that, and you start the planting at the bottom, so you had to wait till the water got all the way down. Every once in a while you'd be like, "Where's the water?" And you go up there and it's running down a gopher hole, and you had to fill that in. And then you get the water all the way down there, you put a plant in, and then you'd make a dam, and you'd puddle up the water, and you'd stick the plant in, and then the person next plant up would do the same thing, cut the water off, and then you'd do this. So as a kid, you're playing in water, you're making dams, mud, dirt. It was great. That was fun. Planting was a lot of fun. And we do this like sort of leapfrog all the way back up the hill, and then we get done, and you move the water thing over to the next row, and it started running down, and everybody walked back, and we planted, I don't know, 20 acres that way over not all at one time, but over the years. So at least 20 acres, maybe 30 acres.
It's all love.
It's all love.
Labor of love.
Yeah. So
people say they love wine. We
love it.
Yeah. So this was the 80s, and I got to shoot birds during harvest. That was fun. They gave me, I don't think I had a driver's license. They gave me a 410 shotgun, and I basically wandered around and shot at birds during harvest to keep them from eating the. You can't really hurt. I had to shoot the birds on the wire, because actually hitting a bird in flight with a 410 is nearly impossible, for especially someone as bad a shot as I am. So I would actually wait till they landed on the wire, go out, pick one poor unfortunate bird. That bird would get hit, all the rest of them would leave, and then I would walk back and hide or just goof off for another 10 or 20 minutes until they came back. That went on like all day. So again, as a boy, that's kind of fun. Firearms, unsupervised, no, it's fine, it's all good. So we did that for a while, and then I finally graduated from high school and kind of rebelled at being in dirt and mud and that kind of stuff, and I went off and decided to join the Navy. And
he went to the Naval Academy.
So I went to the Naval Academy.
It's not just joining the Navy.
Yeah. So I went to the Naval Academy, which is all the way across the continent.
As far away as you can get from Oregon, in the continental U.S.
And anyway, I went through the Naval Academy, and then went out to the Navy, and I drove destroyers, and I operated nuclear reactors, and served for about 10 years. And it was funny because I think it was 2014 harvest. And I'm walking up out of the vineyard, and it is hot, and it is dry, and it is dusty, and it is outside, and it's on land. And I'm like, I got as far away from this as I could. I didn't really sort of think that at the time, but now I recognize it.
You were leading troops too of pickers. Remember that was the
yes, that was the Civil War year.
Yes.
The Civil War battle reenactment year.
Our vineyard manager absconded, and we had to run it, and we had too many crews, and we had to do it.
2014 was huge crop, and so the pick went on for it was monstrous.
Like the entire valley underestimated the crop estimate by 30%
more, and so we had
people fermented in bathtubs and
there's some funny
beds.
video of Jim Prosser talking. He was being interviewed by like one of the local news stations about he said we're trying to get wine to just stand free form with no container around it and just stay there, right, kind of thing, because every container in the valley was filled with wine, but he delivers it better if you could ever find that. He's a very funny guy, so he does that very well. And so we had a day where the crew flaked out, and I had to tell a customer that we weren't going to be delivering the grapes, and I yelled at the vineyard manager, and the next day
I yelled at him worse.
Well, yeah, the next day was either Saturday or Sunday, which can be dangerous because the crews will show up with extra people because it's the weekend, and so wives or kids or whatever will come out, and so all of a sudden your crew is like bigger than you were normally been doing during the week. And he also got a contract crew because
we had yelled at him.
And that contract crew had sent like their A-team. These guys were unbelievable. And so we come out here.
I have video of it somewhere.
We get out here and it's dark and starting to get light. And I'm like, well, we'll see who shows up today. And all of a sudden cars just.
There were like 24 cars.
And I'm like, oh boy.
And they had multiple people in each car. And we're like,
and our regular crew.
There's only one truck to deliver grapes.
Right. Yeah, and our regular crew basically grabbed one tractor and took off and started picking Pinot Gris, leaving the contract crew looking at me, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm in charge today. Okay. And so
I'm trying to run the winery.
Right. She's up here, and so we're down below the road, and they just picked something that normally takes us 3 days. They picked like in 3 hours. I'm like, oh boy. And I go to her. I go, well, they're still here. They still want to pick. So he said, well, let's pick the old vines, which is back up over here. And so they get done, and there's about 20 of them, and I'm like, well, follow me. And so I just a single column, and we just came marching up the road and marched up the driveway and hung left past the tree.
It's hilarious.
And walked right past
Except that it wasn't funny at the time.
And it's like, and it's dusty, and I've got a hole in my chest because of other reasons. But anyway, I've got this sort of cyst thing that I was supposed to keep out of dirt and other problems that wasn't happening. So, and anyway, we march on by like a Civil War.
And I'm just going.
Like I'm a general. I marched the troops out, and it was almost not
That
quite.
was the day I learned how to drive the tractor.
Right, there was that, and we got out to where the old vines are, and it was basically like a company halt, right, face. Pick, and they just went up the hill, right? And it took them less than an hour to pick the whole thing. And I'm like, all right, guys, we're done. I got nothing left for you. And stuff that would have taken us 4 or 5 days, they picked it in the morning. It was crazy. And we had so many bins of fruit. We had bins of fruit everywhere. It took us forever to get all that fruit.
3 days.
3 days. Which it was all out that day. What are you talking about? It was all good.
It was all delivered that day. The day was picked.
So, but anyway, I went off and did about 10 years in the Navy and really enjoyed it. But kind of started thinking maybe that wine thing wasn't so bad. And I actually started making some wine on my own when I was on a shore station a little bit. And I just literally a kid of wine and said, well, let me try this thing.
This is the carboy blowing up in his closet.
Yeah, that was
story.
More of that. And then, it's amazing, by the way, you make carboy of wine, it's 5 gallons, which is astonishingly easy to make that even that small quantity. And then you have your buddies over, and you're like hitting the tap on this thing, like, and it's like, it still hasn't gone down. I mean, we just had piles of people in the house that we were renting at that point, and it was like, okay, well, I guess everybody liked the wine, kind of thing, and so I kind of just was experimenting and playing around and making wine on my own, and then got stationed back in Bremerton and actually came down and got some wine, got some grapes from our vineyard. and took them back up, and we kind of stomped them a little bit, and that was the one that actually exploded. It was some Gewürztraminer that went berserk, and so I was just playing around making some wine, and I got stationed in San Diego, and actually would be silly enough to drive to Davis from San Diego to do a couple weekend classes and then drive back, like all in one shot. My sister at that time lived in San Francisco, so occasionally I'd use that as an advantage. And I finally said, you know what? I was pretty tired. The Navy was pretty busy at the time, and only got worse after I left. And I was like, I think I've done my duty. I think this feels pretty good. And I wanted to work with my dad, and so I said, I think I'm going to come back and do this wine thing. And he's like, okay. And so I came back. I took some classes at Jamaica, most of the classes down there, and I went off because I knew absolutely nothing about business, because Navy. And so I went and got an MBA up at University of Washington, and which helps to get the day job, which helps keep you from waking up in the middle of the night going, I don't know how to sell enough wine to eat, kind of thing. And kind of just started going from there. And the first vintage we produced was 2007, and some Pinot Noir, and we just kind of kept going. And like I think Beth's kind of filled some of how we've run along since then. So
that was one question.
I know, that's good though. I think I answered all your questions. See, look at that. It's good. I'm a little thirsty. So, all right, second question.
What was the family's reaction to you wanting to make wine after all these years of basically just growing grapes?
It depends who you ask.
Dad was fairly enthusiastic. Mom, maybe less so.
It's still mad. She brought it up to me.
Well, it's funny.
Last
Dad,
week. I never wanted to start a winery in the first place. Well, we have one, so.
I think Dad would have started a winery back in the day, but Mom did not really want to do it. And so I'm not sure she was, or as Beth noted, is thrilled that we are actually in the wine business, although she enjoys drinking the wine. And so, a little bit of mixed reaction, but, I didn't move back in. That helped. In my 30s, that would have been fun. Although I did, when MBA, you do an internship kind of thing. I interned down at Intel. And I thought about getting an apartment down here, and I'm like, parents are right here. So I lived with my parents for whatever that was, 6 weeks when I was about 35. Wow, was that on fun? God bless them. That was fine. It saved me a lot of money, and it was fun. It was nice to see them, but like, are you home yet? Your dad wants to eat. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like homeschool all over again, right? Kind of thing. It's like, kind of thing. So fortunately,
Kevin's dad ate on a schedule, and if you missed that schedule by 5 minutes,
that was bad.
Oh, there was.
I've got one of those.
In fact, when we did go to France, we took a family trip to France to go to Alsatia in, I think it was pre-9/11, so I think it was 2000, maybe 2001.
Most people say Alsace. I speak wine, French,
I
French.
think that's how the Germans say it. So
okay.
I'm getting myself in trouble from that conversation. So we took a red eye. It was just the family. It was my sister and myself and mom and dad. It was probably the last family trip we ever did. Before wives, kids, dogs. Well, no dog on that one. We flew into Paris from a red eye, and then left our bags at the Best Western that they found near the opera. I didn't even know it was possible. And then we were all in one big gigantic room, and let me tell you, your parents snore more than you ever do. And my sister and I were just like, oh, the horror. Because I'm 30, she's like 27. We're like, how did this happen to us? I mean, they paid for it, so it's like, all right. And anyway, we besides don't go to the Louvre when you're after the red eye, because you walk around the Louvre and you're just like, Mona Lisa, a little hard. The Louvre's hard enough to absorb anyway, but when you're like red eye all night, that's what you go to. It's just impossible. Anyway, somehow my dad had scored reservations at the Jules Verne, which is the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower. We were, I think, the first ones to show up. I think the staff was a little like, hello, or bonjour, or whatever it was. And we go in there and we sit down, and they bring the menu, and What we realized afterwards is this isn't actually a place that turns tables. They have like one seating because they're French and they're Parisians. And so we're like the first ones there, and they bring out a menu. It's also one of these places where like your decision is, do I go with a 5-course meal or the 7-course meal? Well, my dad's like, well, I want this and this and that. And they're like, I mean, technically it's on the menu, right? They have a la carte, entree, items, but, over here, this wonderfully crafted, and they probably, I'm sure they have wine pairings, that kind of stuff, and then he orders one bottle, and so we go through all this, and, we eat, because, we got to eat, because Dad's scheduled, and we get through all this, and then they're like, well, can we get the check? And they're just like, they didn't know, because literally people are still showing up to be seated, and we're leaving, and I think they're like, who? What? Who? But that was Dad. He had to go. My sister had some friends at the time who lived in Paris, and we got back to the Best Western, which was lovely. And she calls them, and she's like, "Yeah, we just got back from the Jules Verne." They're like, "You just got back? What are you talking about? Like, you should be going now, right?" Like, they were just flabbergasted because they were used to Paris time. And so that was Dad. He had a schedule. He had to eat, by 6, or it was going to be angry, or 5:45 would be better.
Yeah.
So, if you
making reservations, you had very precise reservations.
If you were smart, you could shove cheese and crackers at him and hold off the inevitable if you were smart. And you made him a martini, that would usually also kind of keep things going.
Vodka martini.
Vodka martini, right? Yes. And so, if you were smart enough to get ahead of the problem, you could delay it a little while, but not for very long. So. But yes, that was our adventures in Paris. And I'm walking around going like, how do I get out of the room without anybody noticing and go out and, kind of thing. So I did not figure out a good way to do that. I think maybe I got out a little bit, but not really. So
one of the things we did when we went to Burgundy in 2011 is we worked harvest for the first week, and I went a couple days before Kevin did, and so I rented a little Fiat that I could drive like nobody's business. I could parallel park that sucker. It had a stick shift and diesel. I only had to fill it up once. It was awesome though. I don't know how much wine you could get in it.
She turned into a French woman. It was really weird. Because I got there a few days later, day job again, and so I have to do this whole. She sent me these very cryptic notes on how to navigate out of the airport to a train station, but not that train station. Go to the other train station, and then get on a train going this direction, and then right through the really bad parts of Paris, and then show up at the main whatever it is, the Nord, whatever it is, the main train station there in Paris, and then find these tracks and get on the TGV, and then ride that all the way out to Dijon or Beaune? No, Dijon.
Beaune.
No,
Beaune. Oh, Dijon, you had to change trains.
Yeah, then you get off there and wander around, because there's everybody waiting for this one little train that runs down to Beaune. And so I managed to do all this, and I get off the train, and then classic, like I had the classic Americana moment where I get out of the train station and I sit down on the steps in front of the train station, and I could either be backpacking across Europe or a GI or whatever it was. I'm an American guy sitting on the steps of a French train station, kind of, and then up comes this French car.
A Fiat
with French
I loved
pop,
my Fiat.
French pop music coming out of it. And she's like, get in! And I'm like, what? Hello? Who are you? Oh, white.
Like, we gotta go back to the vineyard. We're picking.
Get in. I'm like, okay. So she...
It's my first harvest, right?
So I
I'm still excited.
Off she goes ripping through, like, through side roads and this and that and the other. And next thing I know, I'm in a vineyard.
We're in the Eau Côte de Beaune, which is
not no more coat, Eau Côte, kind of thing. And they get there and they're all like, "Oh, Kevin," and they give me
because they've heard about him.
Right, they've heard about him. And the next thing I know, I'm like, well, they know I own a vineyard, so now, and I'm like, I haven't picked grapes since I was like a kid. I mean, you do it a little bit, right? But like hardcore, just pick rows. And I'm like, all right, here we go. And so I'm, and I've flown all night, and I'm just like, click, but I can't look like I don't know what I'm doing, right? I can't quit, because I'm a hardcore American vineyard owner, right? And I grew up around these vines. I know what I'm doing, and so I just kept going until we were done, fortunately. And then, we get down there, here, have some French beer. I'm like, all right, I like this. And, we process all our food in, and she smokes a cigarette.
I only smoke when I'm doing harvest in France.
Right, yeah. And I'm like, what type of travel dimension have I fallen into, kind of thing. So, but it was a lot.
So the first week we worked really hard, and then the second week all the fruit was in, and we were done, and we did the the harvest celebration,
and the big grape fight, and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and then we danced in this happened. The crew we fell into was this very interesting, mostly French crew, who were not professional pickers,
teachers, and people who can take 2 weeks off,
and the auto mechanic.
The first day says, "I am a French doctor," and he turns around and pulls his pants down and shows me his bare bum, and I'm like,
loser. Okay.
And a very nicely muscled one, but. Okay, and I'm married. Actually, I wasn't married at the time.
I was a little disappointed because the French men seemed to be quite happy to drop trout anytime, but
we saw a lot of French asses.
Were very we saw a lot of French men's asses.
Yeah.
The women, I'm like waiting, and I'm like, come on, no. The French women are far more modest. It's like, darn, that would have been a lot more fun. Anyway,
I had a good time.
Yeah, but this crew, they like to sing. They were very French, but they were also
Americans. If the American wine industry is lacking anything, it's good drinking songs.
Yeah, no,
we have no good drinking songs, and we need them.
Right, because they would just start launching off in the song.
They have all these drinking songs.
Yeah,
they're great.
We need some drinking songs,
and they're in French. And we're like,
but we get done with the harvest and we take the fruit back up, and then we do this like singing conga line through the village, this Volnay, through the village, and then kind of around the main.
You forgot the grape fight part.
Well, the grape fight happened down. So
there's a grape fight, and you throw grapes at each other and stuff them down their shirts and stuff. It's fun.
One key element, successful element for French vignerons is to schedule not grapefruit for the last pick, because a grape fight is going to happen. And I could imagine if you were talking about something that was going to go into like $200 bottle or $1,000 bottle of wine, and people are throwing grape clusters around, you'd be like, yeah. So it was Aligote, and which is a lovely white wine that's usually fairly cheap. And big grape fight, people shoving grapes in hair and that kind of stuff. And then we all hop in the vans and buses and back up into the village,
singing the whole time,
and
we don't know the words,
and everybody as we're going along,
and beeping the horns,
yeah. And they have a little more fun.
They have a lot more fun.
They don't pick as hard as we do. They're much more civilized, and so then everybody piles out, and this like singing conga line thing goes around it's not
it's the village of Volnay.
It's a village of Volnay, but there's sort of this common thing we're going around, and these tourists like drive through, and next thing you know, we're conga lining around the tourist's car, and they're like, what is going on? And they're probably like crazy Frenchmen, and we're like, because I could tell they were not.
We looked French,
and we were like, look, Americans, we're dancing around.
But we're in Colombia.
Put your foot in, put your foot out. Anyway, and then it was a lot of fun, and those guys have a lot of fun when they're doing harvest. At least that year they did. Now, since then they've had several vintages that were a total disaster. I think it was probably less fun. I think this last year, I think they've done better, so hopefully they're doing fine. But that was fun, and then we kind of played. We would come to.
So the second week, we got to be tourists,
right? We'd help out at the winery if they needed it, because most of the pick crew went home.
Come here.
And come on.
Come here.
He's like, what are you guys doing?
Come here. Oh, goodness. Okay, you can be on the camera. Yeah.
And so then we kind of played tourists, and so we drove around up and down Burgundy, and we found various.
We basically stalked vineyards, and we had a vineyard map and a vineyard book in English. Thank God. And we're driving all over trying to figure out why they are Grand Cru when across the road is not Grand Cru. And we're like, is it the elevation? Is it the slope? Is it the dirt? What is it? And at one point I'm really lost and very frustrated because somebody's not giving me good directions. And I'm driving the Fiat like crazy, and I finally just pull over and go like, damn it, give me the map. And he goes, seriously, look left. And I'm like, no, give me the map. And I turn and look left, and it's Romanée-Conti. I'm like, oh.
She had randomly driven through.
I got
Romanée.
lost in the right place.
Right. She drove randomly through the village of Romanée and pulls out and parks. And I'm like, I don't know, the most famous one's right there. You know, like,
That's what we were looking for.
right, you know,
So I was very good at getting
Latosh
lost.
over there, you know, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so,
But we spent most of our time looking at vineyards and then wandering into.
Tasting wine.
We had no appointments, so
Right.
we couldn't go to wine tastings other than like go into a shop and be
Right.
like,
Which is
let's
still fun.
let's
And we
buy a
drank a lot of
bottle
great
and
wine.
taste
And
it. And
at the
oh my
time
God,
they had- it was
just
wonderful. They had-
gorgeous.
you could go get like a bottle of local Cremant sparkling for like €7 or €9.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. And
then
so
we go
we'd
to
do one of
Paris.
those, and then you'd have, that was the aperitif, because there's a lot of Oregon winemakers there, we were meant to talk about. And then, so you get together somewhere, everybody bring, you bring a bottle to is this amazing €7 wine. That would be the aperitif, and then you go off to dinner somewhere, and the food is great, and
Amazing.
you got it. If you go into France, because we stopped in Paris on our way back, which was culture shock, and at least at the time, I'm sure it's gotten more expensive, but the wine was super cheap, relatively.
Yeah.
The food was
Super high quality,
super high quality
super
food,
cheap.
and the prices were quite fine.
Yeah.
The people were amazingly friendly and mostly spoke enough English or
Put up with our
put
crappy
up with my
French.
French, which turned on at about 5 days in, which
You just start speaking French. I'm like,
and I've never taken French.
who are you?
Yeah.
What are you doing? I've been here 3 days longer than you, and I don't speak French yet.
So, but I found I usually have to be in France. France is French. So English and German are very much like walking, and French is like skiing. And so when I go skiing, which hasn't been for quite a while, like I got to get my brain into sliding mode. I usually bounce around and try to slip and slide and do some things while I'm doing it, and to try to get my brain into sliding mode as opposed to mode. And French is kind of like the same thing. You've got to get your brain to like click over. So, are you off?
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Anyway, that was a trip to France. One
Yeah.
trip, so a lot of fun.
Okay.
All right.
Question
More
number 3.
Question 3.
Tell me about, as you started making wine, especially as you started making it commercially here, tell me about kind of developing your winemaking philosophy. Like, what did you want your wines to be?
So,
Good.
oh, good. Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yes.
Great, actually. Great.
From the very beginning, it was always an experiment or effort to show what the vineyard could do. So we always made an effort to, as much as possible, showcase, to not get too fancy or tricky, and to kind of, on the winemaking side, be as, we're very much, we said we're not, consider ourselves to be natural winemakers, whatever that means. We are fairly low interventionist winemakers, minimalist winemakers. But that's almost more because the more we do to the wine, the less it's about a signal from what the vineyard did and more about what we do with it. Now, sparkling wine's an interesting difference from that because you really kind of build a sparkling wine up. That being said, we really like what our vineyard does with sparkling, so, is that a pretty good spot there? Yeah. But yeah, we try to do sort of minimal interventions. We keep the oak modest, although we use new oak, and we'll use a decent amount when it's appropriate. We keep the toast modest. We tend to use the same cooperage year to year, because the more we change that kind of stuff, the more it's less about what the vineyard did and more about what we did with it. And then we try to keep individual blocks separate and for as long as we can, and we'll do some things like the old wines you're tasting come from a particular single block. The reserve wines and the Shale Mountain wines are a blend of all the different blocks that we take fruit from. And so when we build the reserve wine, we taste it blind, and each block has a chance to make the team. Some blocks have been in every reserve bottling we've done, and others have come and gone depending how they did that year. And it's also helps us with a feedback loop of what are we doing in the vineyard, and what block did well and what block didn't and why, and those kind of things. So it's always started and stayed rooted in showcase what the vineyard can do, and I think that's still true today. We don't.
Do you want to hear a rant?
Oh.
is that
Is
people,
this the part we're going to have to tell them to cut out, probably?
when people say, we have a Grand Cru vineyard in Oregon, and I told you we went stocking vineyards in Burgundy, but you know why they're Grand Crus? And we basically came to the conclusion that they're Grand Cru because the monks made stellar wines from them year after year after year, no matter what else happened. And for 200 years. And when we've been making wine for 200 years in Oregon, we'll know what the Grand Cru vineyards are. We have no idea.
Right. We think we
We're a
do pretty well.
50-year-old business.
We
don't
like what
know.
ours
We
does.
like what ours does.
Yeah.
We think it has a lot of potential. We're not very good at selling that potential, but we think it's a lovely vineyard. And is it Grand Cru? Maybe, but ask me in 200 years,
Yeah.
except I won't be here.
We'll check back in and see how it's going.
Yeah, but it's, we need consistency and time. We really need time in Oregon. Everybody says, oh, we're so great, we're Grand Cru. You don't know yet. And give it some time and give it some generations. And I like seeing multiple generations in Oregon and multiple, 2019 is not like the previous 5 years by a long shot. And it is a lot like the 80s and 2007. And
Yes,
a lot of people have not been making wine in Oregon for very long. And they
Got surprised this year.
got surprised.
Yeah.
But we're,
I'm looking forward to ours.
we're vineyard people more than winery people. We make the wine, but we also grow it, and we walk that vineyard every day. So we see what it's doing and what's going on far more than a lot of winemakers do. And there's no criticism on that. You prioritize what you have to prioritize. And
I would imagine
they're
there'd be
also,
winemakers who would be like, your winemaking's a little rustic. You could do this, and this. I'm like,
What?
Well, maybe, but we just got a forklift. I mean, come on,
I showed them the forklift.
You think we got that tool?
7
Come on,
years
give
of
me a break,
forklift-free winemaking.
Right.
That's
So,
exciting.
Yeah, those barrels are heavy, even empty.
So we used to only stack too high, and
Because that's as
Kevin and
far as
I
you
would
can
lift them empty up there and fill them up full. And then when you have to rack them, it's really difficult because you can't get the racking tool into the lower barrel.
You got to rack
It's-
the top ones first, and
Yeah.
get them off, and then
Yeah.
you can come back in.
And you,
Or at least rack the top ones empty so you can kind of push them up, and then you can get them.
yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah, forklift's nice.
Forklift is great. You can see the dent in the door where I drove the forklift
Yeah.
into it.
Early learning lesson.
Yeah.
there.
Again, you make a mistake
once.
Day two.
I think she's only done it once.
I've only done it once.
Yeah.
So tell me about your vineyard. You talk about being vineyard first.
Yep.
So and it's a obviously very old vineyard.
Yep.
Tell me about the terroir of the vineyard and,
Sure.
and what you're growing here.
So we are, so first of all, we started planting at this particular spot in 1976, and the youngest vines we have were planted in 2001. So all the vines, all the blocks have a very decent amount of age on them. We're principally Pinot Noir, about half of it is Pinot Noir, about a third is Pinot Gris, and then we've got some Chardonnay, and we've got a few other cats and dogs. We have a little bit of Syrah, a little bit of Tempranillo,
Viognier.
some Viognier, Albarino, 50 plants for Grenache,
Half
which
of it.
everybody asks about. And those were Dad planted those as sort of we call it the global warming block, sort of an experiment on can warmer climate grapes do well there than the hottest part of the vineyard. And it was some old 108 Chardonnay was there, which nobody wanted to buy, so something else had to go there. So we're on Laurelwood soils here, and in fact we're in the hopefully soon to be approved, already under review Laurelwood District AVA. It's a sub-AVA of the Chehalem Mountains. And so Laurelwood soils, we tend to think, are closer to Jory Dundee types than, say, maybe Eola or your sedimentary Willikenses. So they tend to be red fruit. Maybe I like to say that on the red fruit, Laurelwood kind of does the same note as a Jory, but like an octave higher, if you want to use a musical analogy. And so they sound the same, but it's a little higher up on the scale. And then we usually get some, I think one of Laurelwood's signatures is that it gets some kind of spice as well. Usually white pepper, sometimes regular pepper, sometimes something else. 11 was just forest floor, which isn't a spice, but it's pretty clear. And so we get a little something extra on top of there. I think, again, in 200 years, when everybody stayed acidic for that long, I suspect those are kind of be the tastiness they talk about. A little bit hard to say on the white wines because I don't think anybody has really nailed down like what Chardonnay or Pinot Gris does differently on different soils, although they probably do different things. I'm just not sure we've done a whole lot of cross tasting at this point to know that. Although I think we make very pretty white wines. At least they're more pretty than they're more elegant than big. I would say, but again, that depends vintage to vintage. So. We have quite a bit of self-rooted vines. About half the vines are self-rooted, and which, knock on wood, we'll see how that goes. But 40 plus years, and they're still trucking. So we can't complain whatever happens for sure. And we have a mix of clones. We got Pommard. That's original. The original plantings were all Pommard, and then we've got a block of Dijon clones of 115 and 114 and 667 and 777 and 113, which is not that common, and then some 2A because we didn't have any Vatensville, so Dad wanted some or something. I don't know why we planted that, but it's only 1 acre, half an acre, kind of thing. So we have some 538, which is really rare for here. We call it the Colmar clone because it's kind of where it came from, and it actually is. We got about an acre. It's propagated from a couple plants that OSU brought in 1978, and we were one of the few vineyards they offered it to, and we planted a few of them, and I think they probably forgot about it.
Where is it?
The original 538 is actually in the old vine, so technically it's not 100% Pommard. It is 100% minus 3 plants Pommard. It's on that row 35 next to it's near the Foch. There's one stray Foch plant in the middle of
Marechal Foch.
Yeah, and it doesn't get in. It doesn't get in the old vines because by the time we get around to picking, the birds have eaten them because it ripens about 10 days before it. But it's my dad
called it the indicator.
Yeah, you call it the indicator grape because it'll do color change and everything beforehand. So you're kind of wondering when's Veraison coming on? Where's Bloom coming on? You can walk up there and see did the Foch go yet? And if it did, you're like, well, we got about a week or two, kind of thing. So it's a good early warning sign. So and then we're 300 to 500 feet south. Maybe southeast-ish kind of, and we're in a unique spot here in the Chelan Mountains. If you look at the Chelan Mountains, and I know everybody made fun, but it does look like a T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, upside down. So if you flip it around, we're in the foot, and we're this.
Credit goes to Jim Prosser.
Yeah, Jim Prosser found that one up, and Chehalis Rex, and
we need T-shirts.
And so even though we're on the north side of the Chelan Mountains and on the north part of that, this sticks around, and so we're actually in this sort of unique little spot of southern-facing slope on the north side of the Chelan Mountain. There's not a lot of that around. Most of the north side is east or west kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a unique spot, and we're a pretty early site. We tend to get picking, I would say, 3 to 7 days before most of the valley gets going. So, which is nice because we can get pickers,
and we can freak people out.
Yeah, and
what you're picking? Yeah, we're an early site.
Our 115 block that's closest to the road is on RG rootstock, which tends to be rather precocious, and so it'll change colors before anything. And Adam Campbell actually lives around the corner, and he's told me that block freaks him out because he'll be out walking or driving by, and it'll change color, and he'll be like, "Oh my God!" And it's 2 weeks ahead of everything else, but it apparently causes him some concern when that happens. He knows it's coming at that point, kind of thing. So just tell him about the Foch. That would even be worse because it'll go beforehand. So that color difference. But it's nice having. It's nice having mature vines. I think that's a luxury that not all the vineyards have out there. We've planted a lot of grapes, and although they're showing some maturity, I do think there's something to be said that vines that are over 10, 15, 20 years start to show distinctiveness, and it's one of those things that we see with the old vines that we do. They're very distinct from the other blocks, and more so every year they get along, and hopefully we'll be able to keep that block going as best we can as it gets older, and hopefully not be visited by the louse that shall not be named.
You're fine.
Yeah. Right. Question 4.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So when you started here, you had the tiny little spot that isn't really a winery that you turned into a winery.
Yep.
Since then, you've added this space, you've added the tasting room. Tell us about how that sort of changed what you're doing and how you're marketing and how you're selling your wines now.
Do you want to try that one?
Well, for one, I have a drain that drains, which is great.
Yeah, the drain on the down doesn't go the right way. So.
Yeah, I showed him that.
Yeah.
But cleanliness is next to winemaking. So I scrub the drains, but this is
But in terms of sales as well, and how are...
No, this is a better room to make wine in because it's temperature controlled. That air conditioner up there is at ground level in the back. So we're sort of naturally insulated because we did quite a lot of excavation to get this building in here. And I can hose everything down and I can clean things, and I know that things are going to stay clean instead of every time you open the door, the vineyard comes in.
Right.
We make wine in the middle of a vineyard. It's, cleanliness is hard.
Right.
But then the tasting room was brilliant because that's how we sell most of our wine. And people come out here, and when Kevin was working with the builder to build the tasting room, he goes, "What do you want in your tasting room?" And I forgot about stuff like, a sink and wine storage and that kind of stuff. And I said, big ass windows. And because we have a gorgeous view, and it's one of our biggest assets because we're a working vineyard. So we have a gravel parking lot, and we're not fancy, and we don't have lots of places to sit down. We don't have a kitchen where we can cater stuff. We just don't have that. We're old school Oregon, reinventing the Oregon wine business that's already existing.
We're reenacting.
Reenacting, yes. Realistic reenactment. And so it's been really good for us just because we can sell more wine. And we have a small wine club, but they're our biggest fans. People who like us really, really like us.
Yeah.
And the people who want the big fancy tasting experience and we do actually have crystal glassware, but and I feel so fancy when I come here and it's lovely and everybody waits on me hand and foot. We don't have that. But you come to our tasting room, and usually you meet Kevin or I, and we talk to you about the wines
and the dog,
Chaco, and
Chaco.
Sometimes he barks at you. And but we're very real. We're very authentic. We
It's
just
a word that gets used too much, but still,
we just are who we are, and it's something we believe in, and we believe in wine, and we believe in Pinot Noir, and most of the people who come visit a tasting room are self-selecting as they're interested in our products, they're interested in Oregon wines, they want to come to see a good view, and so we don't get very many unfriendly people. We get lots of awesome people, and which is really nice. And most of our people come back.
Yeah.
And our goal is to provide we're not heavy into sales. I'm a terrible salesperson, actually. And but I'm like, what I want you to do is take that bottle home that you bought here and sit on your couch on a Wednesday night and open it up and be like, oh man, this is so good. I should have bought more. I'm going to have to go back. That's the experience I want you to have.
Yep.
Is sitting on your couch, drinking the wine that we created and going, this is great, instead of, because when you go wine tasting and the third stop you tend to be like, I'll buy some of those, and then you're like, oh man, what was I doing? And I used to be on the consumer side of things. I think the entire Oregon wine business went, oh man, when I got into production, because they're like, there goes our sales.
best customer ever. Yeah.
And I learned pretty fast, you can't market to yourself. But we really, we have a good price point. We're a little bit in the cheap seats. We're in an AVA. We're in a sub AVA, hopefully, touch wood. But we're not on 99W and Dundee and EO Amity and all that. We don't have big marketing guns behind us. So people have to come find us, and that's kind of fun. So most of the people, we talk to people all the time. I had a mother-daughter duo from Minnesota here today, and I was like, so, you guys want to go for a walk? And then Chuck was like, yes! So we went for a walk in the vineyard, and they loved the old vines and shipped a case to Minnesota, and I was like, let's go look at those vines that made that wine. And they had a great time. They're like, it's so beautiful here. I'm like, yeah. Working here is pretty, the views sucketh not, so it's pretty nice. So just, we also, in 2016, we quit hand bottling. That was the smartest decision I ever made, and which I mostly made, sorry. But
it takes a lot more effort to get everything organized. Logistics, yeah, there's no doubt. And you got to fit onto someone else's schedule.
But you can hand bottle 100 cases a day. but it hurts.
Does hurt a lot.
And you, so you can do 200 in a weekend, but boy, does it hurt. And we're old enough to not want to do that anymore.
Also, at the time, the wine business continues to grow up, and so there are now more
Professional options.
Well, there's more options of what you can do. Whereas even like 10 years ago, some of the options we have today were not available
Right.
in terms of that kind of stuff, at least at the scale that we do. You know, bigger guys, sure, maybe, and, you know, they might have their own bottling line, which is a pain to maintain. And, you know, but we're seeing, I think, maturing of the business, maturing of the supplier base. It's kind of nice, and it makes it easier for the smaller guys. I think we'll see, hopefully, more of that.
That was stinky.
Hopefully it's kind of looking at, he's a winery dog. You know, so, yeah, but, you know, I think a lot of other wine regions, both in the U.S.
California.
In California, but also, obviously France, but other places too, you know, they'll have some resources that are available at the smaller scale that we haven't quite got all the way there yet, and hopefully we'll see that, you know. My understanding is, like, you know, the folks like Grower Champagne, lots of times, my understanding is, you know, you'll have a village bottling line or a co-op, those kind of things. And I think also, I've heard New Zealand, you know, has like a lot of co-op bottling facilities, or at least, you know, available stuff. And so I hope we see that more here. I think we will. So,
We are big fans of Andrew Davis.
What was that?
Shout out to Radiant Sparkling Wine Company, because they've enabled us to make some really good sparkling.
Yes, it's really good.
So,
We are
great.
fans of Andrew as well. So
Yeah.
wonderful.
Andrew's fun.
and he's an awesome guy, and he's very professional, and yet he has an excellent palate, and he's just fun to work with. So the people who are really, the wine business, I think during harvest sometimes I get a little grumpy, and you know, working 14-hour days in the hot sun, and not this year, but and I've been known to yell at Kevin, "This is supposed to be fun! We're not having any fun!" And most of the time the wine business is pretty fun. It's fun. It's a lot of work though, and it's a lot of cleaning.
We get to have our own, so vineyard people and winery people, the vineyard person wants to get the grapes picked and sent to the winery, and the winery maybe has a different agenda.
Tank space,
they want
logistics.
tank space and what's coming in, and those vines, you know, the grapes need to hang for a little longer, or some other silliness. And so we get to have our own internal domestic version of that, because Beth generally gets to at least manage the winery flow, because I'm usually running around making sure the pickers are not in the wrong block and picking the wrong grapes, or something like that. Although this year went way better, but that's. And so we've had times where I'm like, "We got to pick this for us," and she's like, "No, you don't get to pick that yet." And then I'm like, "I have to take this from Louisa Ponzi, and I have to take it from my wife." Like, oh, you know, kind of thing. So
This is how we ended up with the 2017 hang time.
yeah.
So the blocks that we take, we definitely drop fruit on, because we've found that we do see a quality improvement with that, and that's the joy of working with the same blocks in the same vineyard year after year after year, is you see that. But in 2017, we went from 0 to 9 fermenters in 2 days. That doesn't normally happen. Normally we get, you know, 2 to 3 fermenters, and then a couple days later 2 or 3 more, and so things are fermenting at different rates, but at 0 to 9 in 2 days, and I was
In a
freaking
400
out.
square foot space.
Yeah, and that's crazy. And so we're insane, and I'm insane, and Kevin's like, "There's more fruit out there. They didn't pick it all." And I'm like, "Don't you dare. Do not bring me any more fruit. I want nothing to do with it." And so he
So
waited
time passed. And
10 days to 2 weeks, so I flip a couple fermenters, we get
Right.
wine into barrel, and then he picked it, and it was 115, or it was 114 and 777, and it had an extra 10 days, 2 weeks of hang time, which is,
so
wineries love hang time. Vineyards hate it, because basically it's hanging out there and they're shriveling and
birds are
shrinking,
eating it.
and we sell it by the ton.
Well,
So
sometimes.
we're going to sell less fruit for the same amount of money,
Or less
just
money.
because you let it hang, and we're like,
yeah.
So-
but we brought it in, and it was.
tastes like cherry pie.
Quite
It's
right.
delicious.
And yeah, but
I hate it.
so we processed, you know, kept it separated, and then checked with the barrels, and we're like, so it is a big friendly cherry pie, and everybody loves it. It's
So,
like,
and we only made 2 barrels of it, but and he goes, "Are you really going to call it hang time?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm calling it hang time." So it's
My dog loves it.
our complete
And, yeah,
irony
but small amount.
wine. We made some in 18 too.
Well, it's
in barrel.
and it hasn't been bottled yet. But not 19. 19 was not a year that
No.
you left out on the vine. So that's it was kind of the opposite. It's more like pick it now. Kind of thing.
So we basically make 3 Pinot Noirs, and then sometimes we make a special project.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've done 100% 115 in the past, 115 Kelowna Pinot Noir, and it's been quite nice. Actually, we
Yep.
made that in 18 too.
I know.
And
Yeah,
so we did 2 special projects, and then in the hang time. So yeah, and then we make some Pinot Gris because we have a bunch of it planted. And
It's lovely.
we do have a T-shirt that says this would be better with bubbles in it because I know that Chardonnay is the new hot thing in Oregon, but it's always better with bubbles in it. So this is our Blanc de Blanc.
Right, that's the
So we
trailbreaker,
just
so.
make Chardonnay to be bubbly now
Yeah, and
because that's the way we like it. And we decided last year or 2 years ago to just start making wine that we want to drink. And that may not be the most popular thing because there's an ocean of great Pinot Noir out there and some really good bubbles coming up, but this is what we want to make, this is what we want to drink, and so that's what we're going to do. Because we're passionate about it, and
people will like it. It's pretty good stuff.
it doesn't suck.
No, it's not too bad.
You guys do need to work on your marketing a little bit.
Yeah, see, I'm terrible at marketing.
I mean, it's awesome. Best stuff ever.
So Beth, you reached out to me this summer after your father passed away, after
Yeah.
your mom passed away, and I'm curious about your experience kind of rediscovering the early Dion Vineyard history and sort of some of the things you found and are sharing with us today. Tell me about that kind of
Got more pictures, we'll find
the kind of
that.
process of finding the old photographs and old bottles of wine and things like that.
Yeah. So Ron was quite a character. He and I have a more flexible schedule than anybody else, so I ended up taking him through chemo and then dealing with when he had surgery for cancer and all the aftermath where he went downhill. And so we developed some pretty good friendships. One of our Harvest t-shirt ideas that we didn't actually print this year was,
Next year.
and he was a sundowner, so when the sun went down, he would just not really know what was going on, and he would pick up.
Probably.
He never used his cell phone ever until he got sick, and then he called us every 5 minutes.
Also something Grandpa did, so be ready out there, folks. I've got your number.
He'd call me and be like, "Beth, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing." I'm like, "You need to get better. You need to get healthy. So you need to rest. So go to sleep." "Okay, so I'm supposed to go to sleep?" "Yes." "Okay." And then, "Beth, when can I go home?" "I don't know, Ron. We have to get you healthy first." "Whatever, Beth." So whatever.
Beth became a very popular tagline for him and us.
But he also when he retired and ran the vineyard, and then 3 or 4 years ago, he said to us, "So, do you guys want to take this over? Because if you don't, I'm going to sell it." And we're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, no, don't sell it. We'll take it over." So I started delving more into working harvest and figuring out how the vineyard works because I had concentrated more on the winery side, and Kevin, obviously having grown up here, knows more about the vineyard. And I quit my day job almost 3 years ago. So it was, I had the time to put into it, and the first year he was great, and he would show up every day and like tell me stuff, and I could have a list of questions to ask him, and what is this and what is that and what does this usually do? What does this sound right to you? And he taught me a lot. And then he was like, "Okay, I'm done," and he would stop by on his way to play golf, which was great.
Yeah, he did that a lot.
And he really enjoyed playing golf during harvest because for
Yes.
years and years and
wasn't
years
able to
he
do it.
couldn't do it. And he played golf at Forest Hills Golf Course
Just around
twice a week.
Twice a week.
And the golf buddy showed up for his memorial or his celebration of life service that was great. And it was the
Yep.
first time we'd ever met them, but they all knew him really well.
Oh, I think
And
I might have played golf with him.
anyway,
once.
they were lovely. And then so he'd show up and be like, "How's it going?" "Good." "Okay, great. I'm gonna go play golf."
Yep.
I'm like, wait, I have a list. Hang on. And so when he came back, he'd check in at the end of the golf game, and I'd get my list done. But so he coached me a lot on learning harvest and learning the vineyard. But then this year was really weird because we'd be like, we can't ask him that. And there's a lot of stuff that I think he assumed that we know because we're here all the time, but it's just in his head. And you've seen some of the notes that he takes, and he did meticulous research, but he didn't necessarily write down what he knew. He just knew it. And so he would tell you it, but if you didn't ask, he wouldn't tell you. And so this year was really weird. We're like, we should ask. I wonder if this is what, we can't ask that question. So it was pretty weird. And we have a new vineyard management company this year, and so harvest flowed really well. And we were very sad because it would have been great. Ron would have loved it. Mm-hmm. He would have loved watching harvest this year. He would have been just laughing and this is great, and he would have been had so much fun with it. So,
but it was interesting. We found I think you take and scan it. This journal. We're cleaning stuff out. Which, for those of you out there, clean your stuff out before you pass, so your kids don't go through like all your college stuff. Just saying.
He never threw anything away.
No, and but we found this old journal, and I wish we'd videotaped.
Your mom reading it. So,
yeah,
oh my God,
she was the one who'd written a lot of it, but when you go through it, it's hilarious because at one point they're actually, I think it's Grandpa is one of them. But certainly Mom and Dad, and they're arguing in writing about the varmint that our first dog killed, which is probably a nutria, but Mom was like, and they draw the tail.
There were three different golden retrievers who lived in this vineyard, spent a lot of time in this vineyard.
Yes, and had many adventures and
skunks.
Skunks.
A lot of skunks.
And but my mom hadn't seen this because she was actually had been looking for it for a while, and it was downstairs somewhere. On and off, she mentioned it, and she went back and read through all this stuff, and it was, like I said, I wish we could have videotaped.
She goes, and the handwriting's changed, so this must be your grandfather,
right? Yeah, and it doesn't go on for too long. It's just for the first few years, and it kind of peters off, and it's too bad because she had actually talked about, and I wish she had done it. Keeping this journal up and maybe writing a book about the whole thing, and I wish she had. But it was a fun find, and it was really interesting. It was just great because she was going back and reading through it and just cracking up with some of these things.
She has MS, and so she doesn't leave the house much, and she doesn't do a whole lot because she's pretty shaky. And
so it was really nice to see her have a really nice moment revisiting that for the first time in, well, let's see, 75, let's say 40 plus years kind of thing. She hadn't seen it for a while, so so that was fun, and it was neat. I don't think I'd ever seen it. So
he kept everything. So I threw out a whole. I've been cleaning through the office downstairs, and there's a lot of stuff. I'm like, that's recycling, that's trash, that's this, that's that. I mean, he has every library card he has ever owned. From the 70s and the 60s and the 50s.
Modoc, one from that was his high school.
I think it's his high school library card. That's all it is.
He had his junior high ID card.
Yeah, and apparently,
Modoc,
what did I tell you? He failed a course in chemistry or something in high school or college, and I found the report card with an F.
It's too bad we haven't.
Or he got a D in it, and I was like,
there's no written record of. He got thrown in jail. So
it's got to be on the internet somewhere.
No, I don't think so. So he and some other kids, they got into an auto repair shop and got a bunch of tires and stacked them out on the road. So then someone would come in and hit the tires, and Grandpa left him overnight. He's like, you can learn how dumb that was, kind of thing. And so he spent a night in jail. But that was back in the day when you could do that and it wouldn't be on your permanent record,
right.
Kind of thing. And I'm sure the sheriff and Grandpa were like, let's teach this kid a lesson, kind of thing. So, but I didn't.
Ron laughed a lot. He used to really laugh, and we'd share celebrations. He'd be like, that's great, that's excellent," and then he'd move on to the next thing. But I really missed that. He was a good man.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Maybe not whatever, Beth, but that was a bit rough.
None of
The rest,
us generally go gracefully. I think.
No, there's no going gentle and back good night.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to broaden out a little bit, talk about the kind of the industry in general. Obviously,
Sure.
you've been around it a long time.
Yes.
In addition to just pure size, obviously has changed. What else has changed in Oregon wine? What are the biggest differences you've seen?
We don't use plastic cups anymore. You maybe have heard that one.
Money.
And the money. Well, even that though. So I mean, besides the fact that I think I was ready to rebel and be on my own and go off and be in the Navy, I didn't really contemplate like the wine business as a career. Immediately at the time, there was Davis was obviously available, but I don't think that wasn't even on my radar of like as a possible thing. And I think even like I remember Luisa Ponzi went off to go be pre-med or something, and then decided to change her mind. And they were way more in the wine side. So, and so I remember I must have been home. I was home on leave, and my dad took. I don't know if Laura was, my sister was there, but we went down wine tasting. Went to Beaufort, and I think they were pouring the '93 or the '94, and we walk in, and there's it might have been a hand-drawn sign, big sign about this wine, and it got 95 points in Wine Spectator. I'm like, what the hell is Wine Spectator? Right? And I think they were selling it for something like $35. And I'm like, $35? Are you fucking shitting me? Somebody's paying this much for wine?
You can edit that part out.
Oh no, you can leave that part in. It was great wine, and I'm like, all right, well this is different, right? And there really wasn't that the back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, yes, Irie and Iraq and people were taking it seriously, but there was still a lot of plastic cups on barrels, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And so I think in the 90s you definitely saw a big jump up in. I'm sure most people wouldn't like price for nothing else per bottle, obviously, and not. Seriousness isn't the right word, because people did. I mean, they were the Volstecs and the Ponzis were making a living and doing it. They were taking it seriously.
But one of the things we noticed in France is that winemaking is a very legitimate career.
It was not something legitimate when we, growing up. Like, it wasn't a thing. Like that, It just wasn't a thing. It was a side business, and for every Ponzi you had
follow
20
your
more people
passion
who weren't doing it.
and
sideways.
It's starting to gain some legitimacy as this is a real career. I mean, I remember when I first quit Intel and I was sitting on a plane and people said, my seatmate said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I just quit my job at Intel," instead of saying I'm a winemaker, because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
And it's like now I'm like, no, I make wine.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do, which is basically. At some point, I had to get new business cards, and I was like, well, I need a better title than, sales and marketing, because I do so much more than that. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be the VP of logistics, because that's what I do. I run the taste. HR needs to be done, payroll needs to be run, the barrels need topped, and we need to move stuff around, or we need to clean stuff. It's all logistics. So I'm the vice president of logistics.
Yeah. Obviously, the number of wineries has increased a lot. The number of labels. That makes a challenge for people. There's no doubt.
When people say, "Oh, I want to make wine," I'm like, "Why? We don't need another label in Oregon.
Right.
We don't. It's an ego. It's an ego thing.
I know it's your dream, and I get it because we love doing it too. We get that, and so not like I would ever be like, okay, that's it. OLCC, no more licenses, please. Could you hold off? Would help us out. But they're too busy doing marijuana right now.
Yeah, they are.
Anyway, so, but there have definitely been, a proliferation of labels, and it certainly makes it a challenge that's different than even 15 years ago for sure, maybe even 10. I remember talking to just Memorial Day weekend, 2000 timeframe, wineries would put out huge spreads. All of them would put out and get huge crowds. Mm-hmm. And now, that happens a little bit still. I mean, Memorial Day weekend's still a big weekend. Still a lot of people come out, but it feels like it's sort of been diffused, diluted out.
Diluted.
Yeah, I think we probably need better. It'd be nice to get Portland to stop drinking Italian wine and drink local more.
Seriously, you go to California, and good luck finding a restaurant that has a wine that's not California on the label, on the menu. You go to France, they have local wines everywhere. You go to Portland, and you've got 2, maybe 3 Oregon wines on that list.
And then a bunch of Italian, a bunch of Cabernet. I get it. People like it, I guess, but
for a town that says, eat local and support your local farmer, they don't support their local wineries. They really don't, and it's sad.
We're not as much as we wish we would.
So I'm a bear on the wine business a little bit because I think we've hit peak wine. I think there's too many vineyards. We're starting to see it in grape sales. The prices are going down. That's true. But grape sale, there's too many vineyards planted. There's too much, and there's too many wines made. And I think David Adelsheim said the 27% of Oregon Pinot Noir grapes are leaving the state. That's a pretty high percentage. I don't know what it is in California. That would be an interesting statistic, but we have more. And you look at the Southern Oregon winery vineyards in the Willamette Valley, and that it's not really a fight, but it's interesting. And they have more grapes than they have wineries to make them, so they have to go. Those grapes have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And the Willamette Valley probably has more grapes than they can sell to wineries too. And I've met more people who are like, it's my retirement dream. I'm going to plant a vineyard, and it's like, because you don't want to retire. It's work, right? It's farming. You have to work at it all the time, unless you really are a multimillionaire. And I don't want us to turn into Napa. And we have friends who ended up buying a vineyard property in Lodi because they priced out. His dream was to have a vineyard, and he priced it out in Napa and Sonoma. And you cannot make money if you buy a vineyard at current prices, even at $8,000 a ton and hanging 6 tons to the acre, they cannot make money. Whatever it is, they cannot make money buying a vineyard in Napa anymore. And God forbid the Willamette Valley turns into that. I also see the trends are very interesting. And nobody will say this, but Gen X are our bread and butter. Mm-hmm. We know that. We are Gen X. We get it. And we are the forgotten generation, right? Because it's millennials, it's boomers. The people who are buying wine and drinking wine are Gen X, and millennials are smoking pot and drinking White Claw. Unfortunately, we have some very lovely millennials in our wine club who are like, "I am not your typical millennial." And I'm like, I know, and that's why I like you. But they, the demographic is changing, and the American demographic is changing. Baby boomers were heavily, predominantly white, upper middle class people. They had lifetime employment. Nobody has that anymore. And the makeup is more diverse, just of people in the U.S., and the younger generations are more diverse, and they come from societies that don't necessarily value wine drinking.
Right, and we haven't necessarily...
Asia does not have a big wine drinking population. China does, but Japan.
But it's a prestige thing. It's not necessarily an everyday thing. So
and
we haven't necessarily, as an industry, done a great job of...
Middle and Central America, South and Central America don't have a wine drinking, whereas Europeans do. Yeah. And so the dynamics are really changing, and I don't know that we can sell everything we're making anymore. So it's got to change. And then the other problem is, that we've seen a slew of breweries closing lately in Portland, and Oregon, and nationwide even. And wine has a longer timeline. So even if you close your winery, you've got 3 years of inventory to sell. So you don't see that it doesn't make as much, and you've got all this capital tied up in it. It doesn't make sense to close it like it does a brewery, where you make it, you sell it, and you make more, and you sell it more, and da 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 da. It's fast. And so I don't know what kind of a bump we're in for, but I see it coming. I might be wrong.
So if you look at the Oregon wine industry in 10 years, what do you see?
Corporatization.
Yeah.
Seriously, no, it's happening.
It was just the double sigh. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, it's. I mean, not to let's maybe not be all doom and gloom. I think, first of all, I do think
I'm all doom and gloom.
Yes, I mean,
except that this is delicious.
I do think that the Oregon wine business is maybe a little better positioned than other states. in that we do sit up on a high-end premium thing. We're not necessarily aimed at a broader market where changing demographic tastes are going to hit first and harder. So I think that helps us some. Obviously, the lower price point you go down, and the more higher volume you are, the closer you get into those kind of concerns. I think you will see. I think you'll see. You're going to start thinking of wineries or wine labels a lot more restaurants. They come and go. Because right now there's sort of this wine labels sort of last forever. We know that's not true. We know there are defunct wine labels from the beginning that have gone away. But for the most part, you've got a lot of founding wine labels that are still around. And even a lot of founders that are still around. That will change, obviously, but I think, unfortunately, but I think wine labels will be a little bit more like restaurants. You know, you'll have your favorite restaurant, like, that's great, and then one day they'll announce we're closing up. Because they'll just come and go. Now the vineyards is another story because they tend to be a bit more permanent. And so hopefully I think the vineyards will kind of continue along and maybe we'll all, I mean, one thing I think that's changed is I think everybody's getting better at understanding the vineyards and understanding what they can do and what they don't. I think we've gotten smarter on what we plant and how we do vineyard cultivation. So I think in terms of the quality of grapes, I think are probably better than they've ever been. And I think that for at least anybody who's the vineyard side of it has become more professional, although there's still plenty of vineyards out there that are small and that are new, and I probably got very surprised by this vintage. Like I said, welcome to Oregon. And so, but I think the professionalism has just really grown on the vineyard side. We talked a bit about like the supplier side is broadening and getting bigger. If we want to keep selling all these grapes and keep wineries in business, we're going to need to do a better job of getting those restaurants and local customers to drink more local wine. We're not Napa. We don't sit next to the biggest pile of money ever created by man, so we've got limits on that. And then we're also, we're trying to get more people to come visit the state and then leave, right? Because we're Oregon. Well, drink some wine here and take it with them, and then order some more, and then we'll ship it to you. So I think all the industry knows we need to work on that some. And yes, Napa is lovely, We'd all love to sell everybody a $100 bottle of wine, and we'd be excited because it's $100, and the customer would be excited because it's only $100. And it'd be great if we did that all the time, but it's not going to happen, and probably shouldn't, because we'd like to have people be able to drink our wine every day, and we work hard on that. So I think you're just going to see that. I think that's right, though. We all have to be aware of how the market customer base is changing. It's not just baby boomers spending forever kind of thing, and so we need to be smarter about it. But maybe it will mean that there is more wine aimed at everyday consumption, and that'd be good, because you go to what we're talking about. You go to France, you get that €7 bottle of wine, and it's good. Or everybody's got the story of going to Italy and filling up the jug of wine at the local place, and it was amazing. Or the restaurant had their own wine, and so maybe we'll see more of that. It'll be smaller margins. That'll be interesting. Everybody will have to figure out how to do that a little bit.
Things I would like to see.
Somebody is getting jealous of not being any attention over here. So we'll have to figure that out, sort of the financial side of how does that work. A lot of, I think, push on Chardonnay is everybody's got visions of $35 bottles of white wine, and they're dancing around their heads to match their Pinot, as opposed to $20 bottles of Pinot Gris, which are a lot harder to make a big bit of money on, but people can open that $20 bottle a lot easier. So we'll probably have to figure out how to do that. So hopefully we do.
I'd like to see a lot more. So wine is marketing. It's mostly marketing. It's how it makes people feel, and it's interesting because our wine club is very much people who recognize what they're tasting. And the people who just go there and feel fancy and taste the wine are like, oh, it made me feel really good. And those people go home with that bottle and it makes them relive that beautiful fancy experience and they feel great. Good. That's not our business model, because we really do focus on putting a quality product into the bottle. But there's a lot of stuff with sustainability and good farming practices that is very interesting to me. We're Live certified, and we have been for, I think, 12 years, maybe 13, anyway, a while. And
Yes.
the vineyard's older than Live was. So, but Live is a really good standard. It's actually better to me, and I get this somewhat from Kevin, that, organic is the same thing for carrots and apples and lettuce and cows and chickens. And so it doesn't necessarily apply to wine grapes. Whereas Live is very focused on viticulture and what are the best practices for a viticulture practice. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I like this organization a lot. I think they don't, again, they're about as good at marketing as I am. So they don't toot their own horn enough. And you look at some of the certifiable standards in California, and they're actually crap. They allow a lot of chemicals, and they allow a lot of stuff. And, organic allows copper to be sprayed in the vineyard. So do you want to drink that? No, Live doesn't allow that. Live is very viticultural certified.
Yeah, some organic guys are going to come running
I
through the
know,
door.
I'm going to get yelled at. But it's the end of the video, so they won't watch it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
So it should be fine. But I think Live, it'd be really nice if Live expanded better and did better marketing on what we really are, because we think it's the best way to grow grapes. And it's really good for vineyard health. We've seen it over 12 years. I mean, how many 12-year-old vineyards are there? Not actually that many, surprising. But we're 40 years old, and we saw a difference. And Ron did farm organically for certain customers here and there. It didn't always go so well. The Old Vineyard is a really good example, too, that didn't go so well. Yeah. Organic's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Live is a vineyard solution, and I think it's really important to make sure that you're not running off chemicals into the wastewater system and looking at your water usage. And now we're on a well system. And actually, the big thing for me is we're dry farmed. We don't irrigate. That's huge in wine. Eastern Washington is completely irrigated. California is almost completely irrigated. Dry farming is a good thing for the environment, and we think it's good for the vines.
What state did you grow up in?
New Mexico, which irrigates the hell out of everything. So there is no Rio Grande because it's just a trickle because of irrigation. So I actually understand water issues pretty well, actually.
We get a little lazy about that here in the Willamette Valley.
Yeah.
Like, it's just water everywhere, right?
There is water everywhere, and it's good to be dry farmed, and it lets you be a farmer more than controlling the environment. And controlling the environment is not working so well for everywhere. And I like the fact that we're dry farmed. I like the fact that we're Live. I think that should be raising to people's consciousness more than just what's in your glass. But again, it has to be a good quality product in the glass. End of rant.
So what do you see as you look ahead for yourselves here at Dion? What do you hope for in the next, say, decade here?
Did you buy those lottery tickets?
Yeah, I haven't checked them yet. I'm hoping that we can make a $100 bottle of wine that you can open and be like, damn, this is a great $100 bottle of wine. That's what we would like to be.
Make about 25 cases of it, because the rest of it's going to have to move at a different price point. It's hard to be small. Vineyard size, we're medium for Oregon and tiny for everywhere else, but on the winery side we're small, and that's tough. We'd like to keep doing it. The economics of small business is not easy for any small business, and it's not necessarily easy at all for the wine business.
Hi.
You're going to be famous as the butthead dog. Yeah.
Want to come up here? Hup.
No, he needs to go outside.
I know. And he wants supper.
Oh, yes, that too. And so I think we want to keep doing it. We would like to work a little less hard.
Yeah. Getting a forklift was like,
Hey, that
oh
was
my
good
God. We got a bin dumper this year, and we used to shovel the grapes out of the picking bins. And people who have helped us during harvest, I showed them pictures. I'm like, that's a bin dumper. We just rake them onto the sorting table. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. I want to come help you again. Like, I know.
I'm never coming back. Oh, I'll come back now.
Try shoveling 7 bins of grapes onto a sorting table. There's a reason that Harvest Body exists. I'm like, I love Harvest Body. I didn't get Harvest Body this year because we didn't shovel as much, and I was like,
I have to go to the gym during harvest.
I'm gonna have to like work out more because I didn't get Harvest Body. Harvest Body is a beautiful thing.
But no, we'd like to. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to not have to work so hard and so much. It'd be nice to make.
We're Willamette Valley. We make real wine.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
Yeah, no, and
Sorry for the strip show there.
Yeah, there we go. I'm like, the good thing this is the end. But I mean, it is something special to keep this vineyard going. To be out there, there's something really nice to walk through a vineyard.
It's gorgeous.
As long as we can, pay the bills. And so, we'd like to keep doing that. We're not necessarily getting younger, so making it all a little bit easier would be nice. Keeping the tradition going would be fun. Maybe not having a day job would be cool.
Maybe not working 7 days a week. 7 days a week.
All these winemakers who go surfing or something after harvest, and I'm like,
I don't know who those people are.
Unicorns.
Yeah. So
We do.
So we'd like to do that. We'd like to enjoy the wine business as much more.
We work too hard.
Yeah, and I think a lot of small, I'm sure big wineries too, but a lot of small wineries work really hard. And just like all small businesses, with an added benefit of manufacturing and farming and high capital costs. I think if we'd like to do that. We'd like to maybe make it a little easier, make some really good wine, keep the dog entertained. Yes.
Yeah, just got one more question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Our most important question of all. So, what's the secret to a successful marriage in the wine industry?
Well, it helps to both like wine.
Gin?
Gin's a good help. Yeah, gin works well.
The ability to yell at each other and let it roll off your back the next day.
I've got a list.
You yell at me sometimes. Mostly I yell.
Solar caution. I think I actually find, yes, you're going to say something that, stop.
No, I mean, working harvest together, if you can work 14-hour physical labor days to the point of exhaustion for a month together and still like reach over and be like, good night, love you. You've got a good marriage.
Which is about as exciting as it gets. Right.
That's called sex during harvest.
Yes.
Was it good for you, honey?
Yeah,
okay, good. Seriously.
There is something. I think that it's weird for me. No, it's weird for me. Yeah, maybe that one gets cut out. Most married people don't work together.
Yeah.
I find that weird. Like, part of us being married is the fact that we work together. It actually maybe keeps us working. God, a divorce would take so much time. All right, fine. Let's
have to
fine, we have to solve this problem.
Who's going to take
find
the
a new
wine?
winemaker.
Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, it's just you. I got to get a new winemaker. Did you have to divorce her? No. Anyway, but it does kind of. It's almost more traditional way of being married, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And so I think it actually, being married, this is kind of the reverse of the question.
I know the answer.
You know the answer? I would say it helps working together helps being.
The answer is you make me laugh. And you still make me laugh. And that's the only reason you get away with all this stuff.
As long as we don't talk
is
politics.
because you make me laugh.
Yeah,
Choco.
Yeah. So,
And we have a dog.
well, having a dog helps. Yes. Yeah. No, I think you work together. I think we do maybe sort of like, okay, you're dealing like since I was in the Navy, maybe this helps in that it's like, okay, she is in charge of this thing, and I'm going to respect that she's in charge of that thing, and then I'm going to be in charge of this thing, and hopefully, I will get to make the decisions over here.
QuickBooks. He's in charge of QuickBooks.
Yeah, I'm in charge of QuickBooks.
I'm in charge of everything else.
You're not in charge of the vineyard, but no, really, how much? See, this is the fun part, right? But it's we have to work. It would be weird to be married and not be working together.
Yeah.
I actually don't know what people who are married and don't work together. I don't know what they do. I don't know what they talk about. Like
Soccer?
Soccer. I don't know. They go to movies, I guess. I don't know. Like who's cooking tonight? That's takeout. Kind of thing. So I think it's kind of the backwards answer of the question, I guess. But for us, being married makes wine work. Mm-hmm. And for us, drinking a lot of wine makes marriage work.
Bubbles, particularly.
Bubbles, very well.
I mean, when you open a bottle of wine that you have created
made together,
and you drink it, and you're like, "Damn, this is good."
Look what we did.
Look what we did. That's an awesome feeling,
yeah.
And it's the art of creation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of art in winemaking. There's a lot of science, and it's right brain and left brain, and you have to use all of it.
Mm-hmm. And it helps when you have two brains, or two times 1/3. Anyway, extra brains.
There's another harvest T-shirt there.
Yeah.
We have so many ideas.
There's a whole list.
There's a list.
Some of them will never be printed. When we're wine tasting, when we barrel taste, it's very interesting because he comes at it from a vineyard perspective, and I come at it from the wine perspective because of my training and his life training. And so he's like, "Oh, this is, overripe," or "This is, tastes like the grass wasn't mowed enough under the vineyard." And I'm like, "Well, this tastes like cherries and pomegranates." And so it's actually very complimentary because we usually, when we barrel taste, we do give them an ABC rating. We haven't had very many C barrels for multiple years, which is great because we keep getting better at this. But we'll be like, I'm like, A-. He's like, B+. I'm like, oh, let's see if I can convince you into it. And we talk each other into it, and then we end up going A-/B+.
Right.
And that's a rating. That's actually a rating. But we taste barrels over 3 different sessions and see what they did over time. We almost always agree. Or we're pretty close.
We kind of, I don't think anybody's like, absolutely not. That barrel doesn't get in. That happens.
No.
I think we're usually like, oh, yeah, that's not ready for prime time. We both will agree on that. And we usually agree on the good ones. And but by working through it, one, I think we make better wine than we would individually. And like I said, what do people talk about and don't work together? I really don't marry people. I don't really. Hi, honey. What did Trump do today? Oh, yeah. Kind of thing. Here, have some gin. So I think it helps. So work together.
Yeah.
Don't get too angry.
And if you do have good makeup,
throw the piece of the press into the vineyard away from the spouse. Those kind of things. Yeah.
Excellent. We had some pretty good answers to that question. That one's right up there at the top, though. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So that's all the questions that I have for you. Is there anything we didn't cover that we should have covered? Anything I'm almost afraid to ask? Anything I should have asked that I didn't?
Deaf retrievers will bring dead skunks back to you and not stop unless you use dirt clods. My mom could tell you the story.
She has the story of throwing the dirt clods at the deaf golden retriever. And he's like, "Look what I brought for you." It's a dead skunk.
Got the face on, like, "Why don't you love me?"
And then she put him in Ron's car, which was at the old vineyard, and said, "Your dog is in your car," and left for home with the kids.
Took us to the kids' home, and Dad had to drive the skunk dog back. It was a VW rat or bug, too.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's some good stories. Yeah, it's too bad Joanne won't talk to you.
Dogs get into amazing adventures in vineyards.
So, Chaco, well, I had somebody at the vineyard, I may have had like a high dollar customer, private tasting kind of thing, and Chaco comes running down from the vineyard, and I reached down to pet him, and I could smell him. And he just has this brown streak on him, and he's been rolling in some sort of shit. And I'm like, oh my God. And I turned the hose on him, which really pisses him off. But I'm just like, I'm so sorry you had to see this and smell this. And I'm like,
Authentic.
It's very authentic.
yeah.
But dogs love vineyards, so they have great adventures. Sometimes those adventures smell.
Often.
There you go. One more important thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both
Thank you.
so much. This has been wonderful, and we've laughed a lot, obviously. So
Yeah.
appreciate your time and
No
your
problem.
candor today, and we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
All right.